Will you be working with him at that time?
No, I think we should have finished the film by then. I'll be working with him from March through...
March morning in 2007, Hollywood Truth magazine stunned the entire entertainment industry with a headline that took everyone's breath away. Secret Journal of Burt Lancaster found. Lancaster, the legendary star of From Here to Eternity, and a man who once marched alongside Martin Luther King Jr. in historic protests, had left behind a final haunting document. But it wasn't a memoir. It was a list, 14 names, tall towering icons of Hollywood's golden age. And Burt didn't mince words. He called them the most vicious people Hollywood ever produced. He exposed the dark sides of those once celebrated by the world. Who were they? And what could drive a man as principled as Burt Lancaster to pen what reads like a final curse before death? To answer those questions, we begin with the first name on his list, and the one he deemed the cruelest of all: Kirk Douglas. 1. Kirk Douglas, a predator beneath human skin. Kirk Douglas, a legend, known for playing dazzling heroes on the silver screen, allegedly hid a true monster within. According to Burt Lancaster's Secret Journal, Douglas wasn't just a star, he was a ruthless manipulator who would crush anything in his way to preserve his power. Burt unflinchingly called him a predator beneath human skin, a man who would stoop to any level to destroy those who dared to oppose him. Douglas allegedly didn't stop at manipulating casting rooms or pressuring producers. He also abused his power by acting inappropriately toward young actresses. One chilling account shared by Burt involved actress Lisa Avery, who was cut from a major project in 1959 simply because she declined a private dinner invitation from Douglas. This wasn't coincidence. It was a deliberate act of punishment, one example in a pattern of exploitation and control Douglas allegedly maintained throughout his career. Beyond leveraging fame and influence to control others, Douglas is said to have used illegal substances as tools of manipulation, buying, distributing, and using them to force directors, producers, and co-stars into obedience. Anyone who dared defy him faced brutal consequences, being removed from projects or pushed on into dangerous situations where silence was the only survival. Kirk Douglas, Burt claimed, was no mere Hollywood icon. He was a monster willing to destroy anyone who stood in the way of his reign. And if you think Kirk Douglas's story is already too cruel, brace yourself for what follows. Natalie Wood, a woman whose fragile beauty concealed a cunning strategist, master of manipulation. 2. Natalie Wood, the master manipulator who cried on cue. Behind the fragile image of Natalie Wood, the woman renowned for her hauntingly sad eyes, lay a ruthless manipulator who would stop at nothing to maintain her power and influence. According to Burt Lancaster, Natalie once cornered a fellow actor in a difficult situation just to have him removed from a project because she didn't get along with him. She staged a fainting spell right in the middle of the set, halting production for 10 full hours, all to pressure the producer into firing the actor. Her manipulation tactics created a culture of fear. No one dared speak out, terrified that defiance could mean career ruin or worse. Burt also hinted that Natalie Wood's mysterious death in 1981 wasn't an accident, but rather a price she paid for the deceit and schemes she had sown. A journalist from the Hollywood Reporter revealed that just weeks before her death, Natalie had allegedly threatened to destroy the career of a close friend if they didn't comply with her demands. Her death on that yacht became a black stain on Hollywood's history. As whispers swirled and her web of lies and manipulation unraveled, Burt Lancaster wrote, "The sea didn't kill her. It only concealed what she left behind on shore." Natalie Wood's demise wasn't merely the tragic end of a Hollywood life. It was, in Burt's view, the inevitable consequence of a lifetime spent weaving dangerous manipulations. And if Natalie's story already chills you, don't look away just yet, because next comes Mickey Rooney, a man with a friendly, approachable facade who allegedly harbored an unthinkably cruel streak. 3. Mickey Rooney, the verbal sadist behind the smile. Mickey Rooney was known for light-hearted roles and a charming screen presence. But according to Burt Lancaster's journal, behind the scenes, he was a verbal sadist, someone who relished tearing others down. Rooney would routinely mock background actors right in front of the entire crew over trivial matters like hairstyles or clothing. He didn't just humiliate people. Burt wrote, he enjoyed watching them crumble before his eyes, then smiled like he'd won some perverse victory. Throughout his career, Mickey Rooney wasn't just infamous for his temper. He was also, Burt alleged, a serial abuser in his marriages. Lancaster claimed Rooney forced his wives to work like servants within their own home, subjecting them to emotional bondage and controlling their every move through fear and violence. Rooney's marriages weren't tales of romance, but rather dark power plays where he broke his partners down until they had nothing left to resist. One of the most terrifying accounts came from 1907, when Rooney slapped his wife on a film set because she was behind schedule. The blow left her physically and emotionally damaged. His string of failed marriages, Burt asserted, weren't merely heartbreaks. They were chapters in a long history of domestic abuse. His victims caught in a cycle of control and violence had no escape. With such offenses, Rooney didn't just ruin his co-stars, he left behind psychological scars in the lives of those closest to him. 4. Elizabeth Taylor, the storm behind violet eyes. Next on the list is the fourth name, Elizabeth Taylor, the powerful icon of Hollywood. In 1962, during the filming of Cleopatra at Cinecittà Studios in Rome, Taylor locked herself in her dressing room and refused to let anyone in simply because a co-star wore a dress of the same color as hers. The production was forced to shut down for 14 hours as she dealt with her irrational fury. When the director asked her to return to set, she hurled a glass of wine at his face, leaving the crew in stunned silence. Taylor wasn't just a famous star. She was a queen of manipulation, orchestrating not only her films, but also those around her. But that was only the beginning of her darker schemes. In the 1960s, during her marriage to Richard Burton, Taylor allegedly didn't just share his spotlight, she took over his career and leveraged their union to exert even greater control over Hollywood. Producers went to her will, and her marriages from Mike Todd to Burton weren't fairy tales, but calculated power transactions. She used deception to strip men of their wealth and used that power to influence everything around her. Up next on the list is the fifth figure, one of the most legendary stars in Hollywood history. But behind his illustrious career was a shadow just as ruthless. 5. Spencer Tracy. Always blaming others. In his secret journal, Burt Lancaster described Spencer Tracy as a devil in the dressing room, a man who always kept a storm of rage ready behind every drink. Tracy's drunkenness wasn't a coincidence. It was a weapon, a calculated tool of terror used to control those around him. He didn't just drink, he drank to hurt Burt. Wrote painting a portrait of a man who wielded fear and violence to manipulate everyone on set. Tracy was not only known for his deep and nuanced roles, but also for allegedly committing sexual assault and physical abuse right on the film set. In one incident, in 1961, during the filming of Judgment at Nuremberg, he shattered a liquor bottle on a makeup table, simply because the makeup artist had made a minor mistake. But that wasn't the end of it. Tracy also used his power to manipulate and intimidate colleagues, forcing them to comply with his demands, even going as far as violating the privacy of co-stars to maintain psychological control. At his core, Spencer Tracy was not a beloved actor, but a ruthless enforcer of power, an unrelenting manipulator who destroyed anyone who dared resist. He could play the saint with a smile. Burt concluded, then threatened suicide just to force a co-star to obey his will. Next on the list is a man with a trustworthy appearance, but behind it lies a cold, ruthless monster who struck fear into everyone around him. 6. James Stewart, the judging manipulator. James Stewart, with his image as the kind-hearted man in It's a Wonderful Life and the righteous hero, in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, became a symbol of decency in the hearts of the American public. But according to Burt Lancaster, behind the mask of that hero was a cold and calculating judge, someone who would use every trick in the book to protect his position. One of Stewart's habits, Lancaster claimed, was quietly taking notes on his co-stars' mistakes during filming, then secretly handing those notes to the director after the day's shoot. This silent sabotage created an atmosphere of fear and unease as actors felt constantly watched and judged, never knowing when they might be next. But Stewart's cruelty didn't stop there. One of the most shocking tactics Burt revealed occurred in 1957 when Stewart refused to appear alongside a black actor. He didn't express open anger. Instead, he cleverly blamed it on script requirements, leaving those around him too afraid to speak out. Stewart didn't just manipulate with status, he used deeply underhanded methods. Burt claimed that he went as far as forging documents to accuse actors who dared to oppose him. With a single fake sheet of paper, Stewart could destroy a reputation, forcing someone off a project. It was a tactic so dirty and effective that no one dared challenge him, afraid of public humiliation or losing their career. He didn't need to raise his voice, Burt concluded. He just had to sit still, and the entire room would feel unworthy of being there. 7. Marilyn Monroe, the black hole that swallowed Hollywood. The next iconic actress mentioned in the list is Marilyn Monroe. Monroe wasn't just deceptive in her romantic relationships. She was also known for bullying and harassing directors, co-stars, and studio executives to force them into meeting her demands, no matter how irrational they were. One of the most shocking stories Burt Lancaster shared involved the filming of Some Like It Hot in 1959 in Hollywood. Throughout the production, Monroe would frequently disappear from set without warning, leaving the entire crew paralyzed for hours, as if praying for her return. She didn't just pretend to be fragile, Burt wrote. She used that very fragility to control everyone around her. Her actions weren't just disruptive. They bordered on harassment, throwing the entire set into chaos and undermining the work of countless others. But it didn't end there. Monroe was also accused of emotional manipulation in her relationships, using deceit to gain power over influential figures. In 1901, she began a secret affair with film producer Jack Warner. When Warner asked her to collaborate with another actor, Monroe staged an enormous emotional crisis. She forced Warner into making decisions that only benefited her, causing turmoil on set and inflicting pain and loss on those around her, all because of her greed and deception. So what about Errol Flynn, a man celebrated as a Hollywood hero? What dark secrets could be revealed about him in Burt's notorious list? 8. Errol Flynn, the demon disguised in glamour. Errol Flynn, with his charming smile and dazzling screen presence in films like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood, captivated all of Hollywood. But according to Burt Lancaster, Flynn was far more than just a wild spirit. He was a predator who abused his power to control and destroy others. He hosted debauched parties where drugs, escorts, and violence blended into sinister spectacles. His victims dared not speak out, silenced by the immense wealth and influence Flynn wielded. But it didn't stop there. Flynn allegedly used his connections to escape severe legal consequences. When arrested for drug trafficking, he immediately called upon his industry power to walk free, resuming his crimes without facing any repercussions. The women he seduced and deceived were treated as disposable tools, for his desires discarded once they had no more to offer. Flynn was not merely a man of poor conduct or violent tendencies. He was a monster without boundaries. Yet the story of Flynn is not the end. Next, we delve into another figure, a legend once worshipped by Hollywood, whose bright fame hid a dark truth, a master manipulator cloaked in secrets and corruption. 9. Bing Crosby, the master of submission. Bing Crosby, a highly talented actor, always appeared calm and composed, never shouting or losing his temper in public. But the true hell, according to Burt Lancaster, existed behind the closed doors of Crosby's private home, where cruelty and manipulation reached their peak. He routinely inflicted emotional torture on his own children. With a gaze colder than steel, Lancaster wrote in his secret journal, describing how Bing used his piercing stare as a weapon to mentally torment his family. Burt recalled one disturbing incident. Bing allegedly forced his son to stand shirtless in the freezing cold, a punishment for a poor grade, so he could understand the feeling of failure. This wasn't just emotional abuse. Bing also threatened physical violence and used acts of aggression as tools to control both his children and relatives. Years later, Bing's own son, Gary Crosby, confirmed these horrors in his memoir, "I'd rather be the son of anyone, even a criminal, than be his." Gary's words stood as a haunting testament to the evil that Bing Crosby cultivated within the very walls of his family. And what of the consequences of such abuse? Let's now turn our attention to Gary Crosby himself, the child shaped by a legacy of pain and the lasting shadow his father left behind. 10. Gary Crosby, the distorted reflection of Bing Crosby. According to Burt Lancaster, Gary Crosby wasn't just a victim of cruelty. He became a twisted mirror of his father. A child beaten during his formative years with a golf club, he grew into a man shaped by trauma and rage. As an adult, Gary was accused of abusing his girlfriends, assaulting others over petty reasons, and even smashing a film director's windshield simply because he wasn't invited to dinner. But that was just the beginning. Gary faced allegations of drug use involvement in prostitution rings and random acts of violence committed to satisfy his anger and lack of emotional control. He didn't know how to love. He only knew how to make people afraid, because that was the only language his father ever left him, Burt wrote. Lancaster described Gary, living proof that evil isn't always born. It is taught over and over again until it becomes part of your blood. Gary's violent behavior, substance abuse, and acts of cruelty were the inevitable results of a life raised in brutality, a life where he unconsciously reenacted the very sins Bing Crosby had instilled in him. And if Gary Crosby's story left you shocked, don't look away yet. The next name on the list is Henry Fonda, a man once thought to be the perfect role model, but behind his modest exterior hid a cold, ruthless figure willing to destroy those around him just to protect his power and influence. 11. Henry Fonda, the invisible judge of Hollywood. The 11th name on the list is Henry Fonda. Known for his iconic roles in The Grapes of Wrath and 12 Angry Men, Fonda was revered throughout Hollywood as a symbol of justice and moral strength. But according to Burt Lancaster, Fonda was in fact a master manipulator, one who didn't need violence to destroy others. He didn't kill with his hands. He killed with silence, Burt wrote in his journal. Behind the heroic characters he portrayed, Fonda was also emotionally abusive within his own family. His children, Lancaster noted, never truly felt loved. Jane Fonda later admitted she grew up in the shadow of a father who never offered warmth, only control, masked as discipline. Even worse, Fonda allegedly drove colleagues to the brink of suicide just to assert his dominance. His cruelty in both personal and professional relationships made him a chilling example of how power could be maintained through fear and psychological manipulation. And if Henry Fonda's story has already sent shivers down your spine, don't look away. Up next is another Hollywood star, seemingly flawless to the outside world, but hiding a dark web of secrets no one could have imagined. 12. Jane Fonda, the brainwasher behind the angelic face. Burt Lancaster recounted that Jane Fonda was not only a talented actress, but also a skilled manipulator. On one occasion on set, Jane allegedly demanded that a cameraman be fired simply because he was a Christian and did not support radical feminism. When her demand was not met, Jane threatened to hold a press conference to expose discrimination within the film crew, sparking a wave of tension and division. But that was only the beginning of the manipulation she orchestrated. Lancaster revealed, "She once looked me straight in the eye and said, 'If you're not with me, you're the enemy of justice.' That he said was the moment he realized Jane didn't need violence or weapons, just a microphone and a crowd to harass her colleagues and alienate anyone who disagreed with her. Jane not only pushed those around her to the edge of their careers, but also weaponized her extreme ideology to pressure people, forcing them to choose sides. She used the power of fame to psychologically manipulate others, making them either comply with her views or face public shame, cancellation, and exposure through tactics she carefully engineered. 13. Joan Crawford, the violence-driven problem solver. Joan Crawford wasn't just a major star on the silver screen. She was someone who believed violence was the solution to everything. At home, she wasn't the gentle mother the public imagined. She was a manipulative and abusive figure. Her daughter, Christina Crawford, recalled being beaten with wire hangers and once had a hairbrush broken over her hand, after which Joan coldly remarked, "Pain is a woman's first lesson." But the stories of domestic abuse and psychological manipulation were only part of Joan's cruel nature. Burt Lancaster didn't just call her an actress, he called her a woman who sowed fear. According to him, Joan frequently used drugs and physical aggression to construct a world entirely dependent on her control. She created an atmosphere of terror where submission was the only way to survive. And finally, the last name on Burt's notorious list leads us to yet another Hollywood star, outwardly flawless, but inwardly cold and ruthless, always ready to destroy the career of anyone who dared to stand against them. 14. Lucille Ball, the razor-edged smile. Lucille Ball was once the embodiment of joy and optimism for all of America. But according to Burt Lancaster, once the cameras stopped rolling, that famous laugh turned into the chilling sound of control and emotional abuse. She didn't just write scripts, she wrote the lives of others and tore them apart when they no longer served her, Burt wrote in his journal. As the head of Desilu Productions, Lucille was portrayed as a psychological dictator who tolerated no interference with her authority. Lancaster revealed that she kept a notebook tracking the mistakes of every staff member, from how they smiled to how they knocked on her door. Anyone who made the same mistake 3 times would be fired without explanation. In one incident, she allegedly forced a writer to rewrite an entire episode within 24 hours, then called him into a staff meeting just to laugh and throw the script in his face. Her laugh once saved CBS. Burt wrote, but that same laugh crushed the spirits of dozens who worked under her. Lucille's cruelty didn't stop at public humiliation. Lancaster claimed she had hidden microphones installed in meeting rooms to eavesdrop on her team's spying, to see who was truly loyal. And if she found anyone who dared defy her, the consequences were unpredictable and often brutal. And those were the untold stories of Hollywood's greatest stars, individuals whose dazzling fame concealed a world of sin, manipulation, and cruelty. Burt Lancaster made the bold choice to reveal it all, a blood-stained warning about the dark secrets Hollywood has long tried to bury. So, what do you think about these stars? Who do you believe was the most ruthless of them all? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss more shocking stories like this one.